I like going to the beach, right? That's one of my things. My wife doesn't, I do.
Yeah.
So, and it's always very frustrating when you go there and you just see all the plastic litter that's there.
It's been estimated over 129,000 metric tons of plastic are imported into Trinidad every year. A lot of it is dumped into the rivers, where it washes out into the ocean.
Some of those beaches have years of plastic netting, bottles. And when you talk about microplastics, all you have to do is go to one of those beaches and you'll see it there. You'll see the big bottle, you'll see little, and then just flakes, right? So, I mean, this is not stories that people make up, it's very true. So for recycling to work, it needs to be easy, it needs to be convenient, and people need to trust that what you say you're doing with it is being done with it. So people need to feel that, hey, if I'm going to invest my time and effort into separating these things into different bins, that it is worthwhile. It's not just going to be all dumped back together somewhere else where I can't see it.
Hey everybody, Chike Farrell here with Sustain You and part of the Caribbean Ideas Group, and today we're doing another recording of our podcast, Sustainability in the Global South, where we like to explore the stories of people who are really trying to create change, create behavior change, create tangible change around various issues around sustainability. And so today I'm really excited about this conversation because I've got Stuart Cozier of Every Bottle Back. Stuart, welcome.
Thanks, GK.
Yeah, it's great
to be here.
Yeah, it's really great to have you here, and really excited for the conversation because we were talking about some interesting things beforehand, which I know we will get into about some of the work that you're doing and sort of the landscape that you're seeing now. Maybe a good place to start is just with, an overview of Every Bottle Back and what you've been doing there. We can go from there.
All right, great. So Every Bottle Back is an initiative being run by Container Recycling Services. We are a new company, approximately 2 years old. In fact, the end of May will be our second anniversary. We are currently funded by Caribbean Bottlers and Blue Waters, with a lot of help also from Republic Bank and additionally Nestle Caribbean. So what's the purpose of the company? What's the purpose of the initiative, right? So what we are trying to do is essentially build up a collection network specifically for beverage containers within Trinidad. So why beverage containers? As you know, every time it rains, end of dry season, flooding everywhere because the rivers are full of bottles, the sea is full of bottles, all that kind of stuff. So we want to provide people with the opportunity to be able to dispose of this stuff responsibly and also feel that something is being done with it that's not just putting it in a nice box in the landfill. Right?
Yeah.
So what do we do with this stuff? This is one of the questions people always say, what do you all do with this stuff? At the moment, what we're doing is, so if you bring your stuff into Charlotte Street, we have a place in Charlotte Street, and one down at Longdonville, working with the community center there. So you bring them in, we collect PET, which is, they have a scientific name for it, but won't go into that.
Yeah.
Which is essentially water bottles and soft drink bottles.
Okay.
Right? And also we collect HDPE, high density polyethylene, which is like your vinegar bottles, cleaning products, these kind of things, right? But our main focus is on PET, and why is that? Because, as I just mentioned, with the flooding and so on, generally what you see is blue water.
Yeah, that's what you see.
Right?
You see
blue water,
these bottles,
you see
those things over. Right.
So obviously these companies, it's a bad image for them and they would like to do something about it, right? And the solution for them is not to stop selling you their product. It's not switching to glass, because glass, although glass is also recyclable, there are issues with it as well in terms of, sand. There's only so much sand in it.
Right.
So we want to give people the opportunity that they can do something to help ameliorate these kind of situations, right? One way that we're doing that is we actually offer an incentive, 5 cents or 5 cents equivalent per bottle, because now we were doing it by bottles, so counting each and every bottle. So this is 2 years ago. Wasn't a big deal. But now, we're talking...
Volume's gone up a little bit.
We're getting up to 17 tons a month just in Charlotte Street,
Right.
which converts to about 760,000 waters.
Wow.
So if you think about that, 5 days a week,
Yeah.
it's impossible. Right?
Yeah.
So we switched the weight, but we had we have 2 years worth of work that lets us know, okay, so if we say 5 cents a bottle, how do we convert that to weight, right? So we know that, for example, there's 70 water bottles per kilo, and there's 40 soft drink bottles per kilo. So we have 2 rates. You just bring them in, and you get $2 a kilo for the soft drinks, $3.50 for the
Okay.
water.
So then you kind of saying, right, like a big thing that people want to know is that this is not going to end up in a landfill, etc. So one of the interesting things that you're doing, which is you're actually now able to, go through, wash, clean, package it up, and then you're able to export it actually to manufacturers or other companies in Central America. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so that's correct, right? So in the past, recycling was, a place, whether it's the States, whether it's Trinidad, whether it's wherever. You'd collect, recycle stuff, and then you'd ship it somewhere, right?
Right.
So you as the consumer that took the time and effort to separate all this stuff, you have no idea what's really happening. Maybe it just ends up being lumped back in somewhere else, right? Well, what we do with the bottles specifically, and this is why we're kind of targeted specifically to these particular things, right? Because these bottles go to a company in Central America. And what they do is they shred those bottles. They put it through a washing line and a processing thing. Interestingly, just a little digression. So one of the things that we don't require people to do is to take the caps off.
Okay. Yeah.
Or the labels, right? Just put your bottles in a bag, bring them to us, and we'll take care of it, right? And the reason for that is when it goes through this washing line, and it's shredded and stuff, what happens is that the labels float to the top, and the material that the caps are made of float to the top, and the PET sinks to the bottom. So it kind of auto-separates.
Okay.
So there's no need for the consumer to go through all the hassle of having to do that, right? Because one of the things about recycling, it has to be easy, it has to be convenient, because, if you have to put a lot of effort into something, a lot of people don't have the time or the disposition.
It's important to create at least where possible a low bar so that you can kind of get the action and the behavior going.
Exactly.
So then, okay, so you've got this organization in Central America, and then they are now going through this process, and then what they're able to then sell it on to other manufacturers or what have you.
Right. So what they do is they do all of that, and they get to what at the end is called recycled PET. PET is a type of plastic that can be recycled reliably 7 or 8 times. Why only that? Because what happens is there's chemical degradation as time goes by.
Right.
And, one of the things about these bottles is that they're clear, right? So what happens after a while, if you start using it over and over and over and over, is that it starts to get a yellowish tinge to it.
I see.
And if you go to buy a bottle of water, it's kind of yellow.
Yeah, we might not want to go there. But 7 or 8 times is actually more than I might have guessed.
Right.
So you actually can get some real
Correct.
sort of pass along use. Okay.
So you can get to bottles that are 100% recycled PET, but normally what happens is that it's used in a lesser percentage. So how does that help? It helps because you don't have to make as much virgin PET as before. Right? So today, for example, or actually not today, but let's say 3 years ago, 100%, if you made 10 bottles, 100% of that was virgin PET plastic. So brand new plastic, just came from oil or whatever the case may be. Today, you'll have maybe 40%, right? So you're using plastic that was already made, and you're making less plastic.
Okay.
So there's a kind of a cumulative effect. Interestingly enough, I was in the States back in October. And if you go there and you buy a bottle of Dasani or something like that now, you'll see it says right there on the bottle, 100%.
Yes, I have seen that. Okay.
So this thing is right now we export it to these companies that do that. But the ultimate goal, as soon as we can get a reliable collection here in Trinidad, is to build one of those plants here. All right. So there's so many benefits to that. First of all, it'll generate some employment. We have a plant. Obviously, it's not every thousands of people, but it's jobs. It'll help the bottlers because they no longer have to think about long lead times to get the resin into the country.
Right.
And it just shortens everything. You don't have to think about, well, what happens if the Suez Canal closes,
Yeah, that's
everything just gets made here in Trinidad, it's bought here in Trinidad, it's brought back to us here in Trinidad, goes back to the factory in Trinidad, gets made into new bottles in Trinidad. So exactly what you were saying earlier about a circular economy, that's the end game.
Love that. Yeah, I love that you mentioned the circular economy because as I have been kind of learning about the space, that is one of the concepts that has been sort of really interesting to me, right? The idea that, can you take products and it's really important for us in, like sort of small Caribbean islands or in Latin America, but definitely in island states where limited landmass, right? Can you figure out ways to create something, use it for another purpose, and kind of create these networks? It's one of the concepts that's super important. And actually, there's this coalition, an association called like the Coalition for Circular Economy for Latin America and the Caribbean, and they actually published this really cool vision study around the powerful benefits for our part of the world, again, Latin America and the Caribbean in particular. So I love that because this is an example of that in action, right? Like produce, people use it, consume. An organization like yours plays a part. Another organization is playing a part. Again, ironically, Caribbean and Central America. But as you said, it could be Central America, it could be South America, it could be other places. And then you kind of get that circular loop without the waste. And I guess, that's probably a really important thing, right? From the standpoint of our landfills and so on. So like that's a part of the equation that you're trying to address.
Correct. So circular economy is, nowadays you find it's a term that people are throwing around and trying to sound good and so on. But a circular economy is not just the recycling. In our case, for example, the recycling the plastic, right? Yes, that is circular. But what is more important, and this comes from what we've seen in other countries in Central and South America, that, one of the good things about Trinidad is we have a very strong social safety net kind of thing.
Right.
Which is good and which is bad, because it's good because people don't live in abject poverty, but it's bad in that there's less incentive to go get work because, hey, I'm doing okay, right? But in other countries like Colombia, for example, as I said, my boss is from there, so we have a lot of examples from them. There's a whole ecosystem of people that they make a living out of this, right? Collecting and so on. And that's one of the things we're trying to do here, because it's not just collecting the plastic and reusing it. It's how can we help people maybe establish a small business or help them get themselves out of maybe not desperate situations, but
yeah, absolutely, create
how can they do something better,
something and impact their community. I love that. I want to talk a little bit more about some of the evolution you've had, some of the growth you've had, and some of the goals you have. But let's kind of go back, right? Because how did you get into this space? Like let's go back. So to maybe tell us where in the country in the Caribbean you're from originally, and what sort of your academic and career path had led you to what you're doing now.
Right. So I've actually spent most of my working career outside of Trinidad. I was born in Point-de-Claire, Augustus Long Hospital, long time ago. My dad was working for Texaco as a driller. And then he got recruited by an international company. And when I was 6 years old, my brother was 4. We left and went. He was sent to work in Brazil, right? And actually, I was just thinking about this. now that it's International Women's Month, I believe.
Yeah.
Wednesday was last week. You know, I think back to that. So we went to work in Brazil, up in the Northeast. The only people that spoke English were the other expats in the company.
Sure.
And there's my mother at 30 years old, too small to run, goes to the country, doesn't speak the language. My dad was working 28 days a month on the rig. So she's just there with too small to run. And, you know, some other wives and so on and so forth. So, you know, things like that just make me believe that women, given the opportunity, can do anything.
Yeah.
It's amazing. In fact, in our organization, there's 10 of us, 6 are women and 4 guys.
Yes.
So, you know, I firmly believe that it's not just talk when people say, oh, women can do anything.
Yeah.
So I've seen it in action. I've seen my mother as an example. I've seen these other mothers that were with her, you know, and I see it in our organization, right? Anyway, so we lived in Brazil for 4 years, and we went to Peru for 5 years.
Okay.
Then I went to Scotland to finish A-levels. I stayed there to do university. I did engineering, electrical engineering. Came back to Trinidad. I started working with a company called Schlumberger offshore here. So I kind of followed my dad to the
kind of went into that
field thing.
Yes.
Primarily because I like traveling, and you know that's what we were doing. So it's something that I was accustomed to.
Right.
But I'll tell you, it's not for everybody because, like my brother, for example.
Yeah, kind of for that sort of
my son.
lifestyle. Right.
So anyway, I was here for 6 years. I met my wife. We got married, and then I left. We went to the States, still the same company. A couple of places in the States. I was there for 7 years total. And then, coincidentally, was sent to Brazil,
Okay.
then to Peru, via
Really?
Colombia,
Wow.
and then back to the States.
Wow. Okay.
So after 20 years with Schlumberger, then an opportunity came up in Iraq and all places. So I went to work there for 3 years. My wife and son went as well. So again,
Yeah. Transported into a whole different world and reality.
you know, powerful woman again, you know. Most people, you see Iraq, they run, you know.
Yeah.
No, it was northern Iraq, so it's a little bit different. It was actually a very, very good time to be there. It was before ISIS and all that. And we left before the ISIS thing started. And then we went to Malaysia, and then I came back to Trinidad. So I've been in oil and gas for 30 plus years, which is like almost 180 degrees from what we're talking about here.
Absolutely.
Right? You know, other people say it's evil and all this, but anyway, so I kind of fell into this recycling thing almost by accident, right? Because at the time I was looking for a job or whatever, and this came up. And it's like, oh, well, I don't really know anything about that. So I started doing a lot of research and so on. And then fortunately, I got the job. And, you know, it's really been a revelation. I mean, it's
amazing.
I don't know, you see so many different types of people, and you work with different people. It's really been amazing.
So tell me, I mean, one, I love that story. The irony of you ended up in the same places as, you know,
it was
that's pretty crazy. But why does this matter, right? Why does the work that you're doing, why does the change you're trying to create matter? Like, why is it important?
So for me, you know, talking specifically here, I like going to the beach, right? That's one of my things. My wife doesn't, I do.
Yeah.
So, and it's always very frustrating when you go there and you just see the kind of all the plastic litter that's there. It's not so bad on the North Coast, but, you know, if you go on the Atlantic coast, you know, down Manzanilla and Toco and all those kind of places, I mean, some of those beaches that just have years of plastic netting, bottles. And when you talk about microplastics, all you have to do is go to one of those beaches and you'll see it. You'll see the big bottle, you'll see little, and then just flakes, right? So, I mean, this is not stories that people make up, you know, it's very true. So, because I like beaches, I also like hiking. You know, we do especially during COVID. It's a lot of hiking because you couldn't do much else. And it, sometimes it baffles your mind because you assume that people that like hiking and nature and all that
Would want
they
to
wouldn't
take care
leave
of
it all
it.
behind.
Right.
But there you are, it's the blue waters next to it as a coat. That's just a little bit frustrating. In fact, somebody was telling me a story just last week. They were here. She had a friend from Canada, and they went to the beach. Togo, I think. No, not Togo. Last year, but I don't know if you've been there, but on the extreme left-hand side, down towards where the river comes in, there's a lot of rubbish and stuff that kind of accumulates there, I guess because of the tide. And so this lady just was picking up everything inside. She felt kind of bad because she's a Trinidadian, and yet here's this foreigner coming.
It was like compelled to do something.
And that's something that can be a little bit frustrating at times too. It's just like driving. And why can't we as Trinidadians do as we do in foreign countries?
Right.
Is it because there's penalties there and there's no penalties here? I mean, let's be proud of our country, right?
So it's interesting because kind of to your point, so one of the things that it sounds like kind of drives you is just this sort of idea again you kind of connect it to, as you said before, right, is these terms, circular economy, this, that, biodiversity, but that's kind of what you're saying. You're saying like, hey, we here in this part of the world, but it applies all over the world, we have something valuable, something great, right? We have our greenery, we have our beaches, we have all of these things. And so for you, it's really important to try to play a role in protecting that and being a part of that, which is great. I also love, I think for people, for me, I've kind of come at this space. I really kind of come at this space as someone who's just curious and bring a curious mind, certainly not a long-time sustainability expert. More my background is tech and marketing. But I think the space needs more people, sometimes with external perspectives and different experience to bring that, because this thing is affecting all of us and it's going to just keep affecting all of us. And, we have to do something about that. So I love that about sort of what you just described. Now, you were sharing with me earlier that, over the couple of years, you have certainly grown quite a bit in terms of the amount that you kind of have now passing through the facility. So you're up to 140 tons last year. Is that right?
Yeah. So, things have been gradually building up. The best month we had was October last year, which was 17 tons. Between, I think it was 14 tons from Charlotte Street and 3 tons from Longville.
Okay.
So, we were super excited. But then we ran into some capacity issues and so on that we leveled off at 12 to the end of the year. And then, but there's some issues there that we are currently addressing just in terms to get back up to that level. Because, the general public has been so supportive, right? I mean, if you think about how much plastic is a very light material, right? 17 tons of plastic. You know how much that is? That is tons. Anyway, so last year we collected a total of 140 tons and we exported 112 of that. So, people might say, well, so wait, what happened to the rest? Did it go to beta? So, unfortunately, not everything we collect is we call it food grade PET, right? It's clean enough to send it somewhere to because we don't do any washing or stuff like that, because typically the bottles that come from us come from households. So people buy their cases of blue water, Coke, whatever it is they drink, and then they bring it straight back. So we don't really have to deal with contaminated bottles or rubbish, these kinds of things. And that's why it's important that people don't bring rubbish, because we can't deal with that, right? So what happens to the stuff that we can't use because it's not quite, and things like HDP. So we're working in partnership with a company called Flying Tree. And what do? They take this plastic and they repurpose it. For example, they make benches.
Okay.
They make tiles. So they kind of mix cement and plastic together and they make these kind of flexible tiles. And the other thing that they're really getting into now is making plastic lumber, which you may or may not know that the Chaguaramas boardwalk is made from plastic lumber, and it's not wood. It looks like.
Okay.
So in that way, that we're trying to make sure that as much as possible, everything that we get is either exported to make recycled PET, or it's used by other people to repurpose. Right? There's a lady in a company called Glastic, I think. We periodically give her caps. So the caps, they're all colors, red, blue, white.
Sure.
And what she does is she makes coasters, and very, very nice. If you go on Facebook and do Glastic, you'll see it. Very nice. So we just give her that because it's not that much. And,
But another way that someone can do something with it. And you were saying earlier on that I think it's probably worth kind of bringing back in about, hey, it needs to be easy, it needs to be convenient, And I mean, what we're trying to build with Sustain You is really, fundamentally, while we sort of started in the training space for sustainability and ESG, what we realized eventually that, well, we're not really in the training space, we're in the behavior change space, right? And that's a really important part of what we're trying to do. And that's a big part of what you're trying to do as well. So I would love you to talk a little bit about that. Because, okay, you talked about, hey, even in the construction of your operations, you had to say, okay, well, how do we make it easy so you don't have to get rid of the labels and the corks? And then you talked about convenience, like making it more, like well located. And so like, are those things are kind of important. What else have you found about making the behavior change easy?
Yeah, so behavior change is a key, right? Because it's all very well people doing it because there's a little bit of money involved. But what you want is, I don't have a problem because we, obviously we are people, right? So, but what we want to get it to is that people will want to bring these things back, just to bring them back, to make sure they're disposed of or reused properly. So for recycling to work, it needs to be easy, it needs to be convenient, and people need to trust that what you say you're doing with it is being done with it, right? Because, one of our biggest nightmares would be, for example, this wouldn't happen, but imagine if a truck going into Beetham, for example, with a load of bags or whatever, and on the truck is every bottle bag. So then people would say, well,
wait, you're not doing, this stuff is just going into the landfill.
So, my time, right? So people need to feel that, hey, if I'm going to invest my time and effort into separating these things into different bins, that it is worthwhile. It's not just going to be all dumped back together somewhere else where I can't see it. So trust is very, very important. Another way that we've seen how much people trust us, right? So the way it works is people come in, they bring their bottles, and we can't pay them right then and there. But right from day one, we started doing was saying, listen, you can bring your bottles and wait, and then get $2 or whatever, however much, $5, $20. Or you can just let it accumulate. And then whenever you want, you just tell us, hey, I'm coming for my money. And that has worked incredibly well. But also that has to mean that they trust us to say, so what happens is, so you'll bring in 3 bags of things, say, okay, you'll get a WhatsApp, either that same day or the next day or whatever, depending how much we got in. On such and such a date, you brought in X amount of kilos of plastic, your balance is X amount of dollars.
Right.
And people have been using that as a piggy bank. In December alone, we paid out $57,000.
Wow.
Just because people let it accumulate in the air.
And then could use it. I love that. And I love also because you talked about the, Glastic. And so this idea of, hey, there's circular economy in terms of like the loop, the circular economy in terms of the ecosystem, right? And other entrepreneurs, people being able to build other businesses on top of it, which in a way itself creates some of the behavior change that we're talking about. So you can create this sort of reinforcing system, but you do need to think about it, maybe not just in terms of, I do this, I take it here, but you have to think about some of the larger pieces. Now, you were saying you do some school education or have sort of thought through efforts there?
So we work kind of hand in hand with the ICARE, which is part of EMA. Most people, actually, I didn't even know it was part of EMA. I thought ICARE. But as you know, IK has bins in 90%, if not 100%, of the schools in Trinidad. So we had some conversations with them, and we said, hey, listen, as a pilot, we'll take over some schools in Port of Spain area. And the reason we focus on Port of Spain is just because the whole thing was started as a pilot to see if it was even feasible. Is this going to work? And thanks to people at Trinidad and Tobago, we've seen eminently feasible, and it definitely is going to work. And so we have 70 schools in Port of Spain that we do the collection from. There have been some challenges with it. It hasn't been as easy as people bringing stuff to Charlotte Street. But, we have conversations with the schools and, to address issues that we've found and so on and so forth. So it's been going pretty good. And that is a formal sort of thing with the EMA, right? They gave us a list of schools. We said, okay, we will take these. But we're also on an ad hoc basis doing other schools that approach us, as long as they're on, a certain route. Typically right now it's along the east-west corridor, just because we're in Port of Spain. And
so you can also to be feasible for what you're doing.
Yeah.
Sure.
So we're doing that. But ultimately, we would like to get it from all schools, right?
Yes.
So how do we do that? One of the things that we're doing, and I think I mentioned the entrepreneur thing that we're looking to start.
Sure.
Right? So basically that's where we will help people by providing signage, by providing
kind of some marketing materials,
shirts, whatever the case may be. And they in their residential area or businesses or whatever, whatever they choose to set up to collect from, they can do that. And then included in that, whatever area they're in, whatever schools fall within it, we will arrange with the EMA where they get that stuff, right?
So then they basically are building a little mini business.
Exactly.
But it also allows you to scale what you're collecting as well.
Exactly. Because to be honest, it really wouldn't be feasible for us. It's been worked out that to cover all of Trinidad, they would need 80 depots like we have in Charlotte Street. Now, that's not really feasible as a business to have that, right? Just because recycling, as I mentioned, there's not a lot of money in it. So you have to kind of be smart how you do it. But the good thing about this entrepreneur thing is where you're helping people set up their own business. So what we would do is we would encourage them not only to do plastics, because you don't want to limit yourself to one product line, right? We will give them the contacts at Carablast Recycling. We will give them the contacts at some of the scrap iron so they could get the cans, and so on and so forth. So essentially,
they're really helping to enable a little mini operation and pay it for. I love that. I mean, so when you just kind of step back and think big picture for a second, like, what's your sort of big, hairy, audacious goal? Around what you hope. It's almost the thing that you hope, but maybe you don't say out loud, kind of thing. Where do you think you can kind of take some of the sorts of work that you're doing, or what is a big area audacious goal that you have for our part of the world when it comes to this stuff? Either one.
So our vision is to have pristine beaches everywhere in Trinidad, rivers, reduce flooding, these kind of things. And ultimately, how we do that? We would like to, in the ideal case, recover every single plastic bottle that's sold, comes back to us, and goes back through this circular economy to the manufacturer, and then comes back to us, right? But it's not just Trinidad, right? There are other small island developing
states,
states, right?
Yeah.
Nations, Grenada, St. Vincent, maybe not so much Barbados, St. Lucia, that could benefit from a similar thing. So the same way that we are exporting to Honduras now, there's a certain cost because there's a certain distance. But can you imagine, once we get that plant here in Trinidad, we could get all the stuff, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Grenada, a lot of these smaller nations that, they don't have enough volume to ship to all of the kids, but they could send it here. That benefits us, benefits the clan, benefits the Caribbean as a whole. So, the goal is, but the immediate sort of medium-term goal is to get this plant built. And once we have that plant built, it's to just everything for Puerto Rico come down.
Yeah. Well, I love where you started. It's probably like a great place to end, because where you started with the vision is actually really an amazing outcome. Like you were saying it and I was visualizing, right? Like pristine beaches, rivers, like the stuff that we have, as you were saying before. The technical term for it is our biodiversity, but the stuff that we have that we should be cherishing and trying to, preserve and use it for tourism and so on. I was actually like seeing it as you were saying it. So, I mean, Stuart, it's been amazing to talk with you about the work that you're doing. I'm like super inspired by it. And, again, I love the passion that you've shown and the work that you're doing and the vision. So, thank you for sharing your story with us. It's been really amazing to hear. And I'm really looking forward to see all of the great work that you continue to do.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been great. Like I said, I've not been in this for very long, but Ryan, for example, he's been a green person for years and years. And I can see why. Now that I'm involved in it, it's very easy to get caught up in it and to want to get this thing done and not browbeat people into it, because that's important as well, but make people feel, hey, I want to do this too. I want, where can I take this stuff?
Love it.
So
awesome.
great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. Thank you.